responsible for programming. And so today we're going to do a wide variety of programming within the next month. But today we just want to stop and offer the opportunity to get comments and feedback from students and parents, as well as we have some folks here um, who will help you to see and understand the steps that Purdue has taken, the precautions, why we have done so well, and why everything seems to be running very, very smoothly here at Purdue. Um, First of all, our first guest is Dr. Esteban Ramirez. Ramirez, he heads the IU hospital, and he also serves as the director of our big umbrella program called Protect Purdue. And so that is a pledge that all staff and all students and faculty make. We pledge to protect Purdue. He'll be first, will be followed by Randy Purvis, who hails us from residential life. She serves as guest manager. We're very excited to talk to her because you'll quite a bit of your life will be there in the residence hall, in the dining hall, and I think she can shed some light upon what that will be like. And then, when you think about safety, you think about keeping us safe, and who keeps us safe? No one better than our police force. The Purdue representing the police force, Purdue University, is is the chief, our police chief, John Cox. Then we'll be followed by a student perspective. We have three students, two undergrads, followed by a graduate student. There'll be opportunities for question and answers. But before we do that, I do want to go through a couple of things. If you look and hover around your name on Zoom, you will see where it shows if you click on participants and then click on your name, there's three dots. If you click on it, you can rename yourself. And it'll make it a lot easier. If you're a student, put an S and hyphen in your last name and first name. If you're a parent, put P, last name, first name. So as we're having conversations, um, it'll be a lot easier to know who we're talking to. It would be really nice if because we'd like to have a conversation, it'd be nice if we could, um, everyone, uh, how do I put it? Allow us to see you, allow us to see you. So you don't have to, but it just makes it more personal. So I'm going to go through just a couple of items, housekeeping items. We ask that everyone keeps their mic muted. There will be opportunities for you to speak, so do remember to turn it off. But in the meanwhile, you may have questions. You may have comments. You may want to send messages. Sometimes when you post messages, there will be folks right here who want to respond to you immediately. So feel free to put comments in the chat room. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, just go down, hover down at the bottom and click on chat. There's also raise your hand. So if you desire to speak, we'll be attempting to monitor that uh, and um, um, and honor your request to speak. We want to stay focused, of course, and we want to, and the way we'll do that is by minimizing session interruptions. So, got to be really careful with Zoom because if your mic is on, then if someone walks in the room, be very noisy. Now, we are going to be taping the session today, and so that's what I'd like for right now. Vivek, are you ready to take over?
Yes, I can
Okay,
share
I'm
my
going to
screen
stop
now,
sharing
please.
right now. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to start the recording at this time. So
Okay.
our very first guest, Dr. Esteban Ramirez, and please correct me so if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly.
You said it
Uh,
right.
as I said before, you're the Chief Medical Officer for PPHC and you deal with internal medicine. I might want to be your patient. I don't know. Don't know if you have time with all these things. And you're a clinical assistant professor of medicine here at Purdue. We welcome you and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So, welcome everyone, and I just wanted to take some time to kind of give an update on where we're at with COVID. And I've been asked to kind of talk about what is the Protect Purdue Health Center, what kind of services do we offer, how have things changed over the last semester versus this semester. So I'm going to kind of go do an overview, and I'm sorry, I know a lot of this, many of you will know some of these things you might not know. So I didn't know what the breadth of information was of the group. So I just figured I'd kind of start from scratch and work my way up. So thank you, and I appreciate your patience with me if you're hearing things more than once. But I think you'll be excited about some of the new things that we're doing in our campus at this time. So first off, the Protect Purdue Health Center provides services such as just answering questions about COVID. If you've been in a position where you know somebody was positive, but it's been maybe 7 days, do I need to do anything? Do I need to isolate or quarantine? Those are great questions for our clinical case manager. So we staff our phones 24/7. So you can call us in the middle of the night. We have somebody who can give you that sort of expertise and that sort of recommendation. And so it's a good idea to give us a call whenever that's needed. Obviously, if you know that you've had a direct exposure, then we start talking about how are you feeling? Let's assess how you're feeling at this time. Do you need to go to the ER? Do you need to go to an urgent care? Or is this something that you're doing well enough that we can just continue to go to the next phase, which is isolation or quarantine? And so we'll kind of get into that. But isolation is more, that's what we call it when somebody needs to separate from the community for a while they're getting rid of that virus. Okay. So somebody who tested positive goes into isolation versus somebody who was just exposed. So let's say you had lunch with someone, that other person was positive, and you just found out a couple days back that when you had lunch that maybe they were infected at that time. You are considered in quarantine at that time, and you will be asked to test just to make sure you indeed are not asymptomatic but positive for infection. So there's a lot of nuances, and that's why our clinical case managers go through a lot of training to be able to help you through those sort of circumstances, because it does get a little gray sometimes on when should I do isolation, when should I do quarantine, when do I need to see a doctor, or am I okay with where I'm at right now? So we do help with also testing on our campus. We provide most of our testing at the co-rec, or which is the main place where we go to work out, of course. And then also for our individuals that are on quarantine, they can also test on their on-campus quarantine sites as well. So these are some services that we provide to try to make it more convenient. And also we don't want to expose any more individuals. So we try to bring the testing to you as best as possible for those individuals that are already in quarantine or isolation. Another key part of what we do at Protect Purdue Health is contact tracing. So this is the part where once we identified an individual as positive, we need to find out who else were you around for the last 48 hours. Because we do know that it takes about 2 days for most of us to start determining or feeling symptoms, right? Having fevers, chills, cough, shortness of breath, muscle aches, things along those lines. And during a pandemic, you want to not chalk that off to, oh, it's just a cold, or it's just this or that. In a pandemic, you want to have a lower threshold to go get tested, or at least talk to one of our clinical case managers who can tell you, you know what, this sounds an awful lot like COVID. You may just want to go ahead and get tested. And we try to make testing as easy as possible. Most folks that go through it this semester are noting that literally you're in and out within about 15 to 20 minutes. So it's not like you're dedicating hours of time to just get tested. So something to think about with that. Another key part with the Protect Purdue Health Center is we work with our community. We work with the Tippecanoe County Health Department and also the Indiana State Department of Health to make sure that we're applying all the new guidance that the CDC provides appropriately to our unique university environment. We also meet daily with our local chief medical officers for the hospitals, as well as the county itself, Dr. Adler, and also the administrative director of the health department. We get to meet with those individuals on a regular basis. It's important to know what's happening at Purdue because it does affect the community. And again, what's happening in our communities and hospitals because it does affect Purdue. So it's important that we have this back and forth. And that we found was I think one of the key things that is very successful in our program is that we have a really good relationship with our community. And I think that helps us to stay on top of things. Next slide, please. There we go. So what do we know about SARS? And again, this is something that most of us already know, but I thought I'd recap. So at Purdue, what we found is most of our individuals are asymptomatic. So 97% of those who tested positive didn't even know they were sick. So this is the whole reason why we want to do a surveillance testing, because we do know that some folks who don't have symptoms can pass it to somebody who could end up in the hospital or could end up having some severe complications. And that's why it's important that we do what's called surveillance testing, where we test somebody who doesn't have symptoms, but it's kind of a way to do a public health measure of finding out how many folks on our campus have the infection. And based on those results, we can determine, okay, folks in this area seem to have more infection. Let's look there. What's going on there? Do we need more education there? And so it just really helps us to kind of keep the pulse of what's going on with the infection in the community. Also, what we found is the most common symptoms here that we have in our students are fevers and chills, cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, runny nose, diarrhea, muscle aches, those sort of things. And so again, when you know, on a regular year, you probably would push through this. During a time of a pandemic, I'd recommend that you consider calling us and just telling us what you're feeling, and we'll determine whether that seems to meet the criteria to get tested or not. Also, it's important to understand that how easy it is for COVID to spread. Again, when you speak, when you breathe, when you sneeze and cough, that's when we seem to spread the virus, right? Because it's in our respiratory droplets. And so that's why masking is so important. And that's why being distant of 3 to 6 feet, and the recommendation is 6 feet, because there's been studies that show that when we speak, our aerosolized material goes around that distance of about 3 feet on average, but can go as far as 6 if you're speaking loudly and if you're singing even farther. So that's why it's important that we try to mask, keep social distancing of 6 feet, and have great hand hygiene. You'll find that we have lots of hand sanitizer stations all throughout campus. Please use those, especially we put them near high touch areas, so elevator buttons or doorknobs and things along those lines. So please feel free to use those, and we'll continue to keep those available to you. Lastly, I just wanted to kind of talk about how do we minimize the severity once somebody gets infected. Most individuals do not have severe disease. As I mentioned, 97% don't even have symptoms, or if they do, it's 1 or 2 things like headache, sore throat, or a cough. But for those folks who are higher risk, those folks can get what's called a monoclonal antibody infusion. And that's just basically, it's like you're given antibodies to fight the infection faster, right? So versus a vaccine, you give pieces of the virus in the arm, and then your body makes the antibodies. But that takes a while to happen. So in the vaccine, it takes a couple weeks. With the monoclonal antibody infusion, it's an immediate response. But this is only approved at this point to use on those who are higher risk individuals. Next slide, please. So the next natural question is, who is considered higher risk? And we'll get to that in just a second. But some of the changes that we are seeing on our campus would be rapid antigen tests. Now, this is something we did not have last semester. Last semester, all we had was the PCR testing. PCR testing takes 12 to 24 and sometimes up to 32 hours. So you can imagine it's hard to be quick and timely with that sort of turnaround time. Rapid antigen tests can give us results within 15 to 30 minutes. That means you go get tested, and within that period of time, we can tell you, yep, you need to go to isolation, or no, you're free to keep going about your business. And so that's very helpful, not only for you so that it doesn't disrupt your routine, but it also is helpful for us to make sure we get you the right advice that you need at the right time. So the advantage, again, is to isolate anyone who's infected as soon as possible. We still use the PCR testing or the nucleic acid amplification test. This we use primarily for that surveillance testing, the asymptomatic testing, where we test the population of our campus. And again, this is more for public health. We're trying to find out where are folks that are infected, or is there a high level or a low level? And that's how we make decisions on where do we keep testing using this sort of information. And also we use the PCR testing based on CDC guidance, for confirmation of certain antigen tests as well. So if you're symptomatic, you come in and your antigen test is negative, but because your symptoms are so consistent with COVID, we do recommend doing a PCR afterwards. So that's what I mean by that as well. Another improvement that we've made recently is we now have quicker turnaround time for our results. So before it would take for us to call you or email you, and then of course there's email tag and phone tag, and that sort of back and forth, unfortunately, keeps us from being timely. What we found is we've been able to collaborate with the folks at Helo, and Helo is an application that you can put on your phone, and you can download it. It's quick, it's free, it doesn't charge you anything. And what you do is you set yourself up so that as soon as you get that result, or as soon as I get that result, you immediately get it at the exact same time. So that turnaround time is so much quicker. And many times, folks will find out almost at the exact same time I find out, which is great, because that means when we call you, folks are like, yep, I know, I'm positive. What do I got to do? What's the next step? And that way we move forward. Right? And it's much easier for us to be able to do what we need to do in a timely fashion. Next slide, please. All right, so some protocol changes that I think most students and employees really like is the CDC, after looking at research, has made the decision to cut back on our quarantine time. So many of you remember having to be out of work or school for 14 days. And more research is showing that, you know what, folks do really well if we just do the quarantine for 10 days. So we've adopted that on the university campus, and we had to make sure the state approved it and that the county approved it, and they were in agreement to use this for our university as well. So we currently use a 10-day quarantine with a repeat test on day 8. Okay, so and the reason for that is, remember that the virus is unique. It takes 10 to 14 days after an exposure for someone to many times develop symptoms. The literature says most folks will kind of turn around day 7. And so that's why testing day 8 will really help us to identify those individuals who may have had a delayed shedding or viral replication process. So again, we use the 10-day quarantine period. That frees you up 4 more days earlier than you would have last semester. So again, those are just those little perks that we have this semester versus last semester, where we do have some science to back this approach up, which is great. Next slide, please. And this is that monoclonal antibody infusion that I mentioned, and it's primarily, again, for high-risk individuals. I will list what conditions those are on the next slide, but basically the important part of this is if you happen to have any medical history that meets this criteria, you have to, once you've turned positive, notify, and that's something we provide you the information, you notify those hospital or clinical infusion centers and that you are positive, you'd like to get the infusion. They have a whole approval process for you to get the infusion. It takes 1 hour. I've had a few of our patients get that done here on our campus, and anecdotally, we see some really good results. Folks who knew that they weren't feeling well, they turned around within 24 or 48 hours after having this infusion. So again, it's just another tool that we have in our box that we can use for how do we fight this infection, but it is an important one, and so I want to make sure that I mention that as well. If you go to the next slide, you'll see who is considered higher risk. I won't read these to you, but you can see quickly there's a lot of folks who would be criteria for this. And so if you happen to meet the criteria, please let us know when we contact you. Or if let's say you tested at home and you're positive and you have questions about that, give us a call. Or if you're traveling and let's say you went home to see grandma or mom and dad and you tested positive while you did that, and you're coming back to campus, let us know, because if you're in that window period, we can set you up so you can get that infusion done when you come back. And again, it's only these folks who have these comorbidities, so these other conditions that it's eligible for. And again, there's no cost to this because the state or the government has provided that funding through your tax dollars, of course, to be able to pay for this medication so that everyone has a chance to be able to not have a severe infection. Next slide, please. All right. Well, I have one more slide in there, but I'm going to go ahead and just briefly give you the overview. It's on vaccines. There it is. Thank you. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is everyone knows vaccines are finally being rolled out. Everyone's doing their job of trying to roll it out as soon as possible. The supply is sort of what we're waiting on to get, but so far we have 2 vaccines approved, and the research shows that once you've had 2 vaccines, after 2 weeks of that second vaccine, you have about 95% efficacy for preventing infection, which is impressive. Not all vaccines have that level of efficacy. So this is really good. It's important to understand that there's 2 different vaccines at this time, but many more are coming. And note the difference between first and second dose. So Pfizer, it's 21 days or 3 weeks, and Moderna, of course, 4 weeks. So again, it's important to know I had this one first, or I got this one, because that helps you to identify that, and the staff will help you out with that when you get vaccinated. But at Purdue, we've applied to be a vaccine site, and we have received approval. What we haven't received is the shipment of the vaccines. Believe it or not, we have a vaccine area teed up and ready. We're just ready for those boxes to arrive, and we'll start our vaccination process as soon as possible. It's important to note that we have to continue to follow the state's mandated guidelines on how we do that. So we can't just jump around and vaccinate whoever we want. We have to go by the age restrictions that are used at this time, but we will continue to do that, and I'll provide that to our faculty and staff and students that meet the criteria. A very key and important part that I want to mention, and this is new, this literally came out about 2 weeks ago. The CDC now states that there's enough proof at this time that if you've had both vaccines, you completed your vaccination, it's been 2 weeks since your last vaccine, and you have a high risk exposure. So let's say you and I had lunch, I tested positive, and they contact you and say, you know what, you had lunch with someone who was positive, and you tell them I was just vaccinated, here's proof of my card, you don't have to quarantine anymore. Okay, there's so much protection from this vaccine that we're finding in the research studies that you don't have to quarantine anymore at that time, and that's huge. That's a game changer. So it's again yet another reason to consider getting that vaccination. We know that these 10 days isolation and quarantine are very disruptive to our work and to our studies, but it also not only protects you, and it protects everyone else around you to do this vaccine. And it really is going to help us to get things as close as possible to normal as soon as possible as well. But thank you for giving me the time to talk to you guys. I really appreciate that. And I look forward to any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? Okay, Naomi Parker.
Hey
Ray,
there. What is the contact information for Dr. Ramirez's team or for the clinical case managers?
Put that in the chat for you.
It's in the chat? Okay, great. Thank
We'll
you.
put it in the
chat.
chat.
Okay.
That's great. So guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. So if you're able to stay around, Dr. Ramirez, you never know.
That's right. I will stick around.
Okay, so our next speaker comes to us from the University of Residences. I always enjoy hearing Randy Purvis. So we're giving her the floor at this time.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me and University Residences to be part of tonight's presentation. I have a very, very brief presentation. We've done a lot to combat exposure in our residence halls and in our dining courts. And overall, we had a really, really successful fall semester. And we'll get into some of the things. If you want, I can share my screen if that's easier for the.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I will do that. Oops.
All right, Vivek, we're allowing her to share the screen. All right, there we go. There we go.
All right, so this is University Residences navigating COVID-19. This was one of the announcements and advertising we put out for our students who are interested in living with us again next year. And we have done so much to make our halls and our dining courts safe and available for our residents to stay with us, even when the university closed initially, or didn't close, but campus went to virtual classes last spring. Our students were still able to remain in our halls and eat with us in our dining courts. That was something that was very important and necessary for us to do. So we adapted pretty much as soon as the pandemic hit. And since then, we've kind of perfected our measures. And I apologize, I have my assistant keeps walking across my desk in front of me, so there's only so much I can do to keep him off the desk. So as we know, this has been quite the year, and it's been no different for us in university residences. And really, it's been our students that have helped create and maintain a safe and healthy environment for the residents. It's because of our students that we were able to remain open the entire fall semester, and that we were able to remain open and start the spring semester on campus again. That is not true for many universities and some of even our Big Ten partners. And we're really proud because we believe that the students really are the ones that created this culture of wearing masks, of social distancing, and holding each other accountable for that. So the very first things that we did was a word that I don't believe existed prior to the pandemic, but believe me, it's very much part of our vernacular these days, but de-densification. The majority of our residential spaces are standard double rooms. So anytime you think of a typical residence hall room with two beds, 2 desks, 2 closets, all that, that's the majority of our occupancy on campus. Now we do have rooms that's slightly smaller. For those of you that might be familiar with Purdue, we like to call them our economy doubles. The students like to call them the carry closets because they're very small spaces over in Carry Quad. These spaces we de-densified. So we made all of these spaces so that they were just single occupancy. And how we determined that was based on square footage in the room, but also how far we could get students' heads from each other when they were in their beds. So not only did we take the CDC recommendations, but we also expanded it a couple more feet. Because we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything possible plus more to make it a safe environment for our students. And so we rearranged all the furniture in the rooms, and we've told the students that once they move in, these furniture needs to stay in those configurations. And so far, we know that there's not really been any issues with that. We also de-densified our common areas. So all of our residence halls have lounge spaces either on the floors or down on the main floor or in the basement. And what we did is we kept everything, we blocked off every other chair with signage, or we blocked off tables. We reduced the number of chairs that were at tables. And I'm working virtually part of the time, and the times that I've been on campus, I've been really impressed with the fact that the students are adhering to these social distancing guidelines. We made our dining courts carry out only. So we reduced the number of seating. Actually, we took seating out altogether at first. We've slowly been building it back in. We've increased our cleaning and sanitation of the residence halls and dining courts. And we've, as I mentioned, increased our safety measures in place to reduce our social contact. So at each of our front offices, there are plastic partitions. As Dr. Ramirez stated, there's hand sanitation stations everywhere. It's like you turn and there's another one, which is really great. There's just lots of safety measures that have been put in place for our students to stay safe with each other, as well as with our staff. So moving into the fall 2020 semester, we were really, really conscious of creating an environment where the students still felt connected with their peers and with their classes. And that was really hard to do. And we're still working on that. Even this spring semester is integrating new ideas and new ways of programming with our students. Boiler Gold Rush was partially in person, partially virtual. And then we've continued to do these hybrid programs throughout the semester. Mentioned a little bit of the dining court adaptations. We have introduced limited seating in some of our dining courts. Prior to that, we had outdoor seating available in tents. Didn't go over as well as we had hoped. A lot of students, because, well, there were partitions in the way, like plastic partitions. And so students still wanted to sit with each other and be able to engage with each other. So they just chose to sit outside or sit in the common areas of their residence halls and eat. we have something brand new where students, instead of waiting in line at the dining courts, they can now order their meals ahead of time and go pick them up at the dining courts. And this has been taken advantage of very heavily. Our students are really interested in that. And then mention that all of our dining courts are carry out. At this time, we do not know what next fall is going to look like as far as our dining courts go. That's information that's still being worked on, I know, with us and Dr. Ramirez's team and other safety officers on campus. And then the biggest implementation we did in our halls, it's been kind of hard to keep this in place, but our students have done a really good job of monitoring themselves. But we have limited the number of outside guests in our residence halls. And normally we don't typically monitor this. It's usually up to the student and their roommate to decide on guest policies for themselves, or whatever the floor puts in place as expectations. But this year, the only folks that are allowed in the residence halls are people that live on campus with us, because we know that they've been essentially gate checked. Before they moved in, everybody had to show a negative COVID-19 test, as well as check marks that they've passed or they've done certain things, showing that they are healthy and safe to return. And so we've monitored all that. Now, obviously we can't monitor that as closely as we can outside of the surveillance testing like we did before they moved in, but this is how we limit exposure. The students must wear their masks outside of their own room. That's including the hallways, including going to the restrooms. And then with move-in, both for, mostly for fall move-in, the students can only have 2 people helping them move in. And honestly, working move-in, this was not a problem. I didn't see many issues with this. So like I said, people were very adherent to our policies and held each other pretty accountable for it. These are just some highlights with some things. So even though most of our programs were virtual, we still had over 2,500 programs that our RAs, our faculty fellows, and the learning communities put on throughout the fall semester. This is not inclusive of any of the spring programs that have happened so far. This is just strictly from fall semester. And then this is definitely a point of pride for us. As Dr. Ramirez can highlight, Purdue's number of cases was relatively low compared to other institutions our size. And only 17% of the positive cases of the entire Purdue community came from our residence halls. We did a really great job of, if we noticed that there was a positive case, we then did surveillance testing for that community and did quarantine or isolation housing if needed. And then, as I mentioned before, we've increased our cleaning and sanitation in the halls, as well as created these socially distanced spaces. So the other great thing is that our capacity stayed at about 92%, meaning we normally keep a capacity of at least 98 to 99% of students remaining on campus who live in the residence halls. A lot of our other Big Ten institutions, they dipped well below 50%. And Purdue, we just kind of blew them out of the water. And once again, I attribute that mostly to the students adhering to our policies and keeping each other safe. So we're really, really grateful for that. And we've moved into the spring semester with the same exact policies in place. And we've also created some spaces, some public spaces, so the students can get together and still make those connections with each other. And so this next slide will highlight just some program highlights that we've had throughout the fall semester. This is just a picture of our dining courts. Now it's all the dining courts are serving the students. We place pianos out on different areas. Movie night at the Ross-Ade Stadium, pumpkin carving on Slater Hill. And then we have these brand new fire pits out on our residential walking path down 3rd Street. And this is such a cool thing. You'll see students out here all the time with the fire pits on. So we've had a lot of programs. We've really had to get creative. One of my favorite things that happened this year was the movie nights at Ross-Ade, because stadium wasn't being used for anything else at the beginning of the semester. So why not host these movies out there? And they were very well attended. And there was, everybody got temperature checked when they came in. They all got their Purdue ID swiped to make sure that they were students. So it was very heavily monitored as well, but the students were still able to get out and meet each other and have a good time. So that's most of what I have. Any additional questions that you might have about any of our implementations or adaptations or moving into what next year may look like, you can direct that to that email address. Our phone number is listed there, as well as any of our social media platforms that you can get in touch with us. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, do we have any questions? I don't see any questions at this time. Are there any questions before we move on? COVID-19 and campus safety.
Oh, it looks like Nathaniel, do you have a question? Your hand's up.
Yes.
Good question. I've seen with a few schools that some of the cases have gone up because of this cold spell that's gone through US. Has that happened at Purdue or?
I'm going to defer that to Dr. Ramirez because I do not know that information.
You know, surprisingly, we were worried about that, and we didn't see a spike in numbers like a lot of other folks were seeing. And I think, again, the messaging on our campus is really good, and also the students really work hard at trying to find ways to still be compliant, stay indoors, protect yourself, of course. But, you know, our kids really have been putting in, our students have been putting in a lot of hard work into this, and it shows. And I think when you compare with other universities, I think the culture is really what you're seeing, is that our student culture here, just they want to be on campus. They want to try to remain here as long as possible, and that if that means a little bit of, you know, putting on a mask and remaining a little distant, they're willing to do that. And I think that's what we're seeing here. But thankfully, we didn't see that.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay, at this time, COVID-19 and campus safety. At this time, John Cox, our Chief of Purdue Police. Take it over, Chief.
Thank you, Derek. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for attending tonight. What I've asked Vivek to put up on the screen is probably one of the most important websites as far as public safety goes that we could share with you tonight. And that's our Emergency Preparedness and Planning Office's website. That particular website not only has all of the links to all of the different public safety pieces, such as our fire department, our police department, our radiological environmental management, but it also has all of the different opportunities for you and pieces of information, such as where you go to get weather information, quick reference guides that you may have a question about. It also talks about our process for an active threat on campus. If you are not signed up for our Purdue alert, you can do it through this particular website and receive all those emergency alerts. We are a storm-ready university, and we are very proud. We operate underneath the umbrella of environmental health and public safety, and we're a pretty high energy and cohesive group that works behind the scenes to try to keep the campus safe and moving forward. One of the probably most interesting parts of the way that COVID has changed public safety on our campus is in the way that the police and fire operate and respond. We worked with our fire department, who is a full service fire department, to acquire all of the different PPE that is required to be able to respond. Our officers went through training with our fire department, and we received support from our partners at Tippecanoe County Health and our partners at our Tippecanoe County Emergency Services Group, that is our TEMA, which is run by Smokey Anderson and those folks. So it has been a full-out partnership with our public safety partners around the community. And I will mention, there's always a joke amongst the police and fire departments that we work kind of like oil and water together. But in this particular case, at your university, your police and fire departments work together and work together seamlessly. As a matter of fact, I will give great kudos. And what you probably do not know is our fire department, amongst all of the firefighting, 2 paramedic ambulances that they run, the hazmat program that they run for all of our laboratories on campus, they have also, behind the scenes and quietly but heroically, managed a lot of the quarantine and the movement of our students. I can tell you that I meet with my Big Ten peers every other week. And early on, in both semesters, they would ask me, how does Purdue do what Purdue does? And I can tell you it's done by a lot of student cooperation. But the other piece that we have that no other Big Ten university has is we have our own full-time fire department, and they have done an incredible job, and thanks to them. And so we continue to work with our partners, Dr. Ramirez and the folks in public health, as we look forward to what this spring looks like. We still are planning for an in-person graduation, as long as our numbers stay consistently good and or continue to improve in Ross-Ade Stadium. So there are things like that that our students have to look forward to, that we will work together to try to bring to fruition. As you all know, we are getting ready to host the NCAA rounds 1 and 2 basketball tournaments here at Mackey. And so that has been another interesting adventure in partnerships with the state and federal government agencies that we're trying to manage the way that we bring them in, yet still comply with our Protect Purdue promise that we all adhere to. And so it's a challenge, but it's something that we will work on the back end, so that that when this is over, it will be well done by Purdue. And I truly believe that we will have another opportunity to shine, not only for our community, but a shine globally for what we're able to accomplish during this pandemic. We are working very well. I will tell you that we are served by the West Lafayette City Police Department within our community on this side of the Wabash River, and they have been great partners. They have worked very well with us when working with our students. We actually have become closer, and if you did not know this, the West Lafayette Dispatch Center now operates out of the Purdue University Police Department's Dispatch Center. So we are co-located so that we can respond to our students both on campus and off campus, and be able to meet the needs that our growing university continues to throw at us. So I am just delighted to be here with all of you tonight. I don't want to just poke around and take your time, but if you do have questions, I'm happy to take those. Please feel free to jump on that website, check out all of your public safety pieces. There's a lot of information there, and never hesitate to reach out. We always love to hear from our students, faculty, and staff. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions? Well, there may be questions later. Vivek, if you would go ahead and put bring our PowerPoint back up. We don't think that this experience would be complete without students. So we have 3 students here who'd like to share of their experience. They've outlined some different points, and we want to, as we go forward, to open this dialogue up so that you feel free to talk. So I'm going to go ahead and let Joyce start off first. Please introduce yourself. Tell them about where you're from and also your major. And then I'd like for you to start off talking about engagement.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Joyce Adebanojo. I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm actually a first semester junior in the School of Mechanical Engineering. I transferred into the School of Mechanical Engineering at the end of my sophomore year, which will be last year, and I co-ded from multidisciplinary engineering to mechanical engineering, which is very tough, but I'm glad with the choice I made. So engagement during this time has been very challenging, and I imagine it's going to be a lot more challenging for the incoming freshmen, especially because my freshman year I was lucky enough to be introduced to the minority engineering program office, and that's how I was able to meet a lot of my friends and also get connected with a lot of the older people that would help me along the way with my academics, providing me guidance with what classes I should take, who I should take the classes with, and how to stay on top of all my schoolwork, as well as be involved in other things. I would advise that incoming freshmen do try their best to stay connected with the Minority Engineering Program office, just because even though right now the Academic Success Center that's in the office only holds 8 people at a time, it's still being connected with the staff will help you stay in the loop about opportunities such as internships, co-ops, free tutoring, and also just be able to hook you up with upperclassmen who are taking the same course load as you. As far as extracurricular engagement, Purdue's been really nice in that they understand that we like to be around other people. So I believe this semester we're allowed to have events with up to 25 people. Please correct me if I'm wrong, 25 people in a room. Even like a lot of the organizations that I'm in are still very precautious about the Protect Purdue guidelines. So we're yet to have any events in person, but we're hoping to do that towards the end of the school year after we have more information about vaccinations and such. But right now, a lot of our engagement have been held through Zoom, like we're doing right now. But the good thing about Zoom is that we're able to stay really connected online, not even just Zoom, but also through social media. A lot of organizations have been using Instagram and Twitter to stay connected with their members. I would say that it's been, so like parents really don't really like when their kids are all over social media, and I like it can be a distraction. But I would say that like it's been how a lot of organizations have kept in touch with their members, as well as spread information about COVID and information about other things going on in the world. I know some things can be very heavy, so it's really helpful to be able to have those groups of people that you like share similar interests with, sharing information with you and supporting you during that time. I'm a part of the National Society of Black Engineers. I'm the Technical Outreach and Community Health Chair for the National Society of Black Engineers. And we've been able to stay connected with our membership through our Instagram, but also through Zoom. A lot of the things that we do on Zoom include breakout rooms, we play games online, and we're also able to use polls to stay connected with our members. For the most part, I believe it's been pretty fun. We've been doing our best. And hopefully, as time goes on, we'll be able to have more in-person things again, especially because in-person community service is the best kind of community service. And I believe that's it. I really recommend that incoming freshmen stay connected with the Minority Engineering Program office. And if they do want to get in touch with extracurricular, please make sure that they're like following the Protect Purdue guidelines. Some organizations don't care. And you want to do your best to stay safe. 6 feet apart, wearing masks. Some people like do not care about other people's safety. The lack of empathy is appalling to me. So whatever like organizations incoming freshmen are a part of, make sure that they care. NSBE cares if they want to join NSBE, and that they keep them up to date on what the things going on Purdue's campus as well as outside, because being in Purdue can be a little bit disconnected. So yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, Joyce. We really appreciate you throwing out that lifeline, mentioning MEP, the Minority Engineering Program. Now, one thing, and either you, well, I'll just ask you to address my question. Because this year, one way that a lot of students get connected to MEP is through what we call our engineering boot camp. And so last year during COVID, we were very happy to be able to offer it virtually. But guess what? This summer, we're going to be able to offer a in-person / hybrid model where students will be able to come to campus. That's A. B, it will be for credit. So that's not something that the students have had in the past. But Joyce, could you tell them a little bit about the academic boot camp, just that experience in general?
Absolutely. So the academic bootcamp is a summer program that incoming freshmen are able to take part of the summer before freshman year begins. I actually did the academic bootcamp the summer before my freshman year in 2018. And it was a really great experience for me because that's how I got most of the friends that I have now and how I got in touch with upperclassmen that helped guide me through my academic career. When you arrive for the academic bootcamp, you're able to they show you your room and who you may or may not stay with depending on what the guidelines are at the time, who you share the room with. And you'll be able to have access to the dining halls and you'll be able to just go through, take your meal and eat like we were talking about earlier with the carry out. And then for the next, I want to say 5 or 6 weeks, Mr. Williams, is that correct?
5
5 or
weeks.
6 weeks. You're
5 weeks.
5 weeks, okay. You're basically put in a call like your first year engineering FYE simulation, first 5 weeks for like the whole semester just condensed into 5 weeks basically. You're in a MATLAB course, you're in a chemistry course, you're in a calculus course, and an English course. And you take part in those classes and you have tests in those classes. And like Mr. Williams said, it's going to be for credit. When I took it, it wasn't for credit. So I believe it's a great opportunity to capitalize on. Being able to get that head start in your academic career is so important because when the school year begins, things are going to be a lot more stressful than boot camp, which is why boot camp is so great for freshmen to take a part of. You need to be able to understand how you work under pressure so that when the school year actually begins, you know how to adapt. And being able to take it for credit is such a great opportunity. And yeah, it's also really good to get connected with other engineers just because the College of Engineering is really big and individual colleges of engineering can also be very big. So you're going to need other people to be able to study with throughout all 4 years if possible. So getting those connections early are super important because I'm still connected with people that have graduated and they still help me to this day. So it's really important to be able to establish those connections early and also be able to just have people that you know are going to go through similar things. We're minorities at Purdue University. It can be very hard for us to find a group of people where we feel like we belong. So that has also been one of the great things, those 3 great things about boot camp, getting connections with like-minded individuals, being able to see what the college experience is like early, and being able to get connected with the MEP office.
Well said, well said. Well, we're going to move on just because of time is getting away from us. So Alexandra's coming at this time. She's a PhD student in materials engineering and to talk to us about online versus hybrid versus in person. And that can be kind of confusing.
Hello.
Alexandra.
Yes. Hello, my name is Alexandra Loaiza, and I'm from Colombia. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Materials Engineering department. So what I have to say about how to decide about which structure will you take, I will say that the best structure is obviously in person because it offers you the possibility to have the support of the instructor and also the support of your classmates. And you will stay update with the class information and all the class materials. The hybrid option is half of the class in person and half of the class online. This is also a valid option, but again, in person is like the best structure, I will say. Sometimes people get confused when they are not in the class with the instruction. And the online structure, I will say I don't have that option as a graduate student because I have research credits, but I consider that coming to campus is very safe. And if you don't have any pre-existing conditions, uh, it's pretty safe to come to campus. Thanks to all the measures that Purdue, Protect Purdue, and other institutions have taken. Yeah, well, that's like the option, and I will say like in-person classes will be the best option if you can make it. And we'll be happy to take any question.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank,
as far as I know, there is not going to be online option for fall semester, or can someone correct me if I'm wrong?
that's what I've heard. We'll be pretty much back to normal except for with a lot of, you know,
Right.
yeah, there'll be, yeah, we did receive and I can send, let me put my email, I can send that communication out. If anyone is interested, we've received a communication about that from the president. I'll be happy to share that with you. So we're going to move on at this time to time management. Regardless of COVID, this is a skill you have to develop. And who better than a senior in electrical and computer engineering? Her name is Kendall Allen. Kendall, take it away.
Thanks, Mr. Willis. Hi, everyone. My name is Kendall, and I'm a senior here at Purdue studying electrical with a concentration in power and energy systems. And I'm in New York City. Need regardless of the pandemic, especially once you're in college. Once you transition from high school to college, I would say that the academic structure is very different. You may be taking less classes than you were in high school, but these classes definitely require more work. So ensuring that you're planning and making sure that you have a planning tool that you like to use, like a planner. Maybe you like to put things in a calendar. Maybe you use an app to plan out your day. Just making sure that you have something to make sure that you're on track, and that you have a list of everything that you need to do for the day is extremely important. There are often times where you will have a syllabus given to you at the start of the semester, and your professors will not remind you of any assignments that you have, any quizzes, any exams, or anything like that. It is just up to you to complete those assignments and to study for those exams. So making sure that you have all of this information in one place for all of your classes is extremely important, just to make sure that you're organized. And then also with the pandemic, one thing that has changed is if you do have online classes or hybrid classes, sometimes you might not need to go to class, which kind of frees up time in your day. Maybe it gives you an extra 20, 40 minutes within your day, depending on how many classes you have. And you might think, okay, I have more free time. But it's really important on how you spend that time and making sure that you're planning out your breaks. Because if you extend that free time a little bit too much, then you can be taking away time from studying or from working or potentially going to office hours. So just making sure during this time, just make sure that you're keeping track of your free time, when it's appropriate to take free time, and like how much time you want to schedule for that. And make sure that even if you are studying, that you're scheduling breaks, because sure, it's important to study so that you can do well in your classes, but you also have to remember that you are a person and your mental health is very important. So it's very important to schedule breaks along with these free times. And then the next thing is just to make sure that you're staying motivated during this time, especially once you get to college. You have people who are necessarily telling you about your assignments all the time, like maybe it is in high school. So you have to make sure that you're staying on top of your work and ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to you to get it done. If you're struggling with something, utilize your professors, try to meet people in your classes, even reach out to the minority engineering program for tutors or for students who are in the same major as you, but have taken classes in previous years. So for an example, I'm currently a senior in electrical engineering, and if I know someone who is a sophomore who's taken some classes that I've taken, or if they're a junior, I would always try to look back and see what resources I have to help them. Or maybe if they're taking a class that I've taken, but with a different professor, and a professor that I had, for example, was maybe a better one than the one that they have now, I would try to connect them with that professor so that they have a resource to go to. So just making sure that you're staying motivated and staying on top of the resources that you need. That's also extremely important once you come to college. And with that, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Kendall. This is a quiet group indeed, but of course, in this environment in Zoom, this is what you have quite a bit. So I do want, before we go, I want you guys to meet Dr. Gatson, but even before that, we want to meet you. That's at all possible. I'm just going to go through and um, call your name, and if you would just introduce yourself to us, because we're like family around here. So we'll start with Brandon. I see your name at the top. Brandon, would you mind introducing yourself, where you're from, and what you're
Yes, that's fine.
interested in?
Hello, my name is Brandon Anderson. I live in Illinois. I go to Homewood Flossmoor High School, and currently I've just been working out to keep myself sane during these times and staying focused on my schoolwork. So, yep.
We understand. We believe me, we understand. Maya Johnson, and we may be calling parents, we don't know, but I'm just going to call you Maya.
Hi, my name is Maya Johnson. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I attend the University School of Milwaukee.
Excellent. Excellent. What do you want to major in? Or do
I
you
would,
know?
biomedical engineering.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. We've got S, which says Vasquez. Well, let me just go down the list here. Cameron Davis.
I'm Cameron Davis. I live here in Tallahassee, Florida, and I go to McClay School.
Great. And what would you like to major in, or do you know yet?
I would like to major in mechanical engineering, hopefully, or civil.
Okay. There's plenty of time for you to figure that out. Naomi Parker, and then it's cut off. Naomi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey there. My name's Naomi Parker Reyes. I am an adult non-traditional student returning to engineering after a totally different career. I currently live in Bloomington, Indiana, and I am looking to get into the industrial engineering department.
Great, great. We want to get you out of IU territory. You'll
Well,
everything, your whole life will be better.
yeah. And I originally went to Rose Hulman, and they can
Okay.
they also consider y'all engineering and technology rival. So that's interesting.
Right. Okay, Nathaniel Wedding, I'm not sure of your last name, but I see Wedding.
Yes,
Nathaniel?
I'm Nathaniel Wellington. Right now, I am staying in Atlanta, Georgia, and I plan on studying material science and engineering.
Excellent, excellent. That's unusual. You'll go far. Last but not least, Maribel Vasquez.
Hi, I'm Maribel, and I am from Vandergrift High School in Austin, Texas, and I want to major in aerospace engineering.
Excellent, excellent. We are so glad that you could come tonight. We're closing out the program, but Virginia Womack was here for most of this call, but she got called away. Luckily, our associate director, Dr. Jacqueline Gatson, is here tonight, and we're going to ask her just to have a few words as we close out. If anyone has any questions or concerns, feel free to lay back at the very end, and we'll be happy to deal with your questions one-on-one. Dr. Gatson? I see her here.
The chat says that she's having some connectivity issues, it looks like.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, at this point in time, we're going to thank each of our guests. I felt like I learned a lot and was very benefited from this session. Our next session will be next week and on the 1st and the 3rd. On March 1st and March 3rd, we'll be sending out reminders, and tell your friends if you have others who are graduating and may be interested in engineering at Purdue. You guys have a wonderful night. Lay back if you have questions or concerns. Thank you very much, our guests, for making this a great evening. Bye-bye.